Okay, welcome to Airspeed Sessions, where we delve into the lives of everyday musicians. I'm Rusty Schaefer, your host, and this podcast is sponsored by Airspeed Amps. Our goal here is to give you some insight as to what motivates these musicians to keep playing and to let you in on their journey and their music. You probably just heard a little clip from Ian Crawford and Cosmic Miles. Welcome, Ian. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. How you doing?
Good, good. So let's first of all, let's get some particulars so our audience knows who you are. You're in the Las Vegas area, right? You live in
Yes.
Vegas and you gig just kind of how often do you gig?
At the moment, about anywhere from 3 to 5 nights a week on average, somewhere
Wow.
around there.
Wow. And
It varies.
is that with the Cosmic Miles band or I noticed there's another band in your biography.
Yeah, there's several. There's always things going on. Cosmic Miles is gigging pretty regularly, so a lot of them are with that. I do solo performances as well. I have some solo material that I've been getting out and doing. That might be the other band that was mentioned on there, but
Okay, very cool.
yeah, I do session work, studio work, so I'm kind of always trying to wear as many hats as I can and stay busy and just keep picking.
Good. Well, that's the life of a gigging musician, right? We'll get into some
Indeed, yeah.
I want to go back, and I want to start sort of at the beginning. Why guitar? What threw you in to grab a guitar?
Um, well, I wanted to just play music. As when I was young, I grew up in a very with a lot of music in the house. My dad strummed some cowboy chords. My mom grew up playing classical piano. Neither of them really played much after I was born, but there was always a lot of music on in the house. The stereo was always on. We had a big record collection. So I knew I wanted to play music from a very early age, and I was always very fascinated with the guitar, um, probably as early as I can remember. And I remember begging my parents for it felt like years and years as a kid, like I really want to play guitar, and they're like, "You're never gonna practice." They kind of like made me kind of really want it. I didn't just get like ask for a guitar and get one. And so what felt like multiple Christmases went by as a kid, and I'm like, I really want a guitar. And when I was 10, I got into like the school band, and I started playing drums and percussion and stuff like that.
Well,
Um,
you remember the first guitar? Remember what that was?
yeah, I had the Squire Strat Pack.
Squire
Came
Strat.
downstairs on Christmas morning. I still have it. I still got my black Squire Strat. The paint's been stripped off of it. It's been completely modded and all. It's had everything under the sun done to it, but I
Right.
still got
And I'm
it.
assuming it came with an amp, right? It came with a little lamp, I think.
Yep, it had a little crate, 8-inch speaker combo amp, and
You
all the goodies. Yeah.
probably cringe now though, listening to that amp.
Oh man. Well, what's really funny? I remember like probably like 4 or 5 days after I got it for Christmas, and I remember um all of a sudden my dad had an old like Fender, like a Japanese Fender acoustic guitar from the 80s, and and so I he had taught me a couple chords before I got the guitar, and uh I remember strumming the chords, and then there's those on those amps in the EQ. There's that little teeny tiny button, like it's like a fraction of a dime size little button, and all of a sudden the distortion turns on, and I remember like, oh, what is this little thing, and hitting it, and the amp just going, what? It's like, and I remember like just being like, whoa, it's like hearing Nirvana, and the distortion kicks on, and it's
So,
just like, oh, and like that moment like motivated me to play for like another 20 hours, like straight, pretty
okay,
much
so
just like couldn't put the guitar down besides sleep.
that's my next question. So you get the guitar. Obviously, you learned a couple, chords. You said, right? Was that the motivator, or was it distortion? Was
You
it chip
know,
or
I just loved it from the beginning. I just
Everything.
I and every it was like a and I don't know if it was just there were like little things always happening that just kept me interested. Like getting a slide, getting a wah pedal, and I was always playing it. Like it was like the first. My sister was a competitive gymnast, and my mom was a nationally certified gymnastics judge. So I grew up in a family where like they were very serious about what they did, and I was kind of the one that I didn't really have anything going for me. And then I found the guitar, and the guitar was definitely my thing. So I completely just immersed myself in it, and I played every day for years, for 5 6 hours a day. I just sat in my room and I just played and I played, and I was always trying to find new fun things to keep it interesting, learning new songs, new techniques, new gear, and luckily I had a really supportive, you know, uh, family who like they saw that I was into this, and the more and more I put into it, my dad would like he's like, oh, hey, I got you a pedal, something to just keep me going with it. So I hit the ground running with it, it hasn't stopped for in almost 24 years.
That's awesome. I remember getting my first delay pedal, and I thought the
uh,
world just exploded. I'm like, I'm so good. I'm so good.
yeah, it's like
Right?
yeah. What was it? Do you remember what it was?
Oh, it was a Boss. It was definitely a Boss, digital delay or something, right? Because they kind of own the pedal market. I mean, we're talking 80s. So,
Yeah.
my first electric guitar was a Fender Squire Strat after I went to a Clapton concert. And I had a red Squire Strat, and I don't even remember what amp. I had some kind of crappy amp, right? It was probably I don't even know, but I remember getting a delay pedal soon thereafter. Like you said, you kind of get involved in it, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, my sound, you know. When did you discover tone?
Well, tone for me has been a really interesting thing. I I grew up in the Seattle area, and I grew up in like just the next town over from where Jimi Hendrix was at, and I actually lived down the street from his grave for a little while. So I used to Hendrix was kind of the whole reason I got like really got into it. The reason I wanted to play. But I had I had that little crate amp, and then I had this it was a Line 6 AX212. It was like this big bulky, had like 30 buttons on it, like preset buttons on the top, like a big combo. It had like an auxiliary out, so I could like run a microphone through it. This big 212 combo. And that was exciting because it had like the Tom Schultz Boston tone built into it. It had all these like the EVH Brown sound, and it had all these things. So I was really fascinated with like, oh yeah, that kind of sounds like this guy's tone and this guy's tone. And but the thing I kind of started realizing, I got really lucky with this, was I had a next door neighbor who, it was funny, like when I first started playing, it was probably not like the prettiest thing, and he'd come over a couple times. He was like a couple years younger than my dad, and he had kids a couple years younger than me, and he'd be like, hey, do you mind asking your kid to turn it down a little bit? And that happened a couple times over a couple years. And when I first started playing, I'm like, oh, and I'd see him outside mowing the lawn. I'm like, oh, this guy probably hates me. I'm like, just cranking it up a lot of night. It turns out, and then I start every now and then. I'm like, I think I hear guitar coming out of this guy's house. Like somebody's up playing. Like I can hear it next door. And it turns out one day we get to talking. We're outside, and he builds amps, and he's an engineer for Boeing. And actually one of the main amps I use to this day is a Plexi that he hand welded the chassis, all hand wired point to point. Like he built this amp, and it's a Plexi clone, and it's still I usually run multiple amps at once. So that amp is usually in my rig. And so early on, in the first couple of years of my playing, I had this neighbor next door who was a total gear nerd. And my dad's like he doesn't play a lot, but he's really into tone. Like he's really into like Macintosh tube amps and stuff like that. So
Right?
he's very into like good audio sound. So like I definitely didn't have the ear for tone when I first started playing. I don't think most people
Nobody
do
does.
right off the bat, especially in hindsight, where you're like, oh man, that was a little squirrely, you know. And you're like,
It's funny. It's funny because we all hear it on the albums we listen to, but we don't. I don't know if the word is appreciate it, or we certainly don't know how to get it.
yeah, and a lot of it, and I'm a big believer that a lot of tone comes from the hands. So the gear you use is extremely important, and it really shapes the overall like aesthetic of what you're doing. But like when like the reaction and response of what you're doing, like a lot of tone comes from the hands. So it's a journey in your playing. It's also a journey in finding like what what are you plugging into and dialing in to like have your hands react the right way that correlates properly.
So, all right. So you're playing every day. You're going crazy, right? You're playing a lot. When did you realize, hey, I'm not bad. I'm pretty good. I turned a corner. Maybe I'm not that hack anymore. I think I can hold my own.
Oh man, I'm always at war with myself with that. I, I don't know. Like I felt like it was just something that like I hit the ground running with. So like I don't really know. Like I knew really early on that this is what I want to do, and I was always really critical. So like I think that just like having like like I said, I had a sister who was a competitive gymnast, so she was very strict about what she did, and so seeing I think just kind of through like some kind of osmosis of like and being I just kind of being around the gymnastics community a lot as a kid, like with my mom being involved. My mom coached my sister too, so like just seeing like what it took and the consistency and the amount of time and dedication, something like I think kind of translated from seeing that lifestyle and how that went. So I was always refining, and I still try to do that. I'm like always trying to
Right.
refine whatever I'm doing, and even stuff that I've been playing for 20 years. Like, oh, have I actually been doing that? Like, or just taking it in a different direction. Like, I don't like to play the same solos twice live. Where I'm very improvisational, or like to take the theme of it and like twist it around to keep it interesting for myself and hopefully the listener.
Now that's what's great about music is that I don't think you ever stop learning, but you're right. You can play that, I can play the same song I played literally now. Oh my God, it's going to be 40 some years ago. But you're right. I will play it differently because I'm in a different place in my life, right?
Yeah,
Different experience now with the instrument. And even though it may be strumming chords, it's just different. It's different.
yeah. Just it could be just the what's the word? Just the swagger you put into the feel of the song.
Yeah.
Just the pocket of how you're leaning into it. It could be how you accent the notes in a lead line or a melody or solo. It just I always try to find a little something to keep it different than the last time.
Right. Right.
Just something to keep it interesting for myself, because that just keeps the fire lit under me for me personally. Just like
Right.
I've had a kind of an issue like with bands I've toured in the past where they want to do the same. We're on tour for 3 months and we do the same hour 20-minute show, and
Same vibe.
I gotta do little things to like
Yeah.
keep it interesting. If I go on autopilot, I start to get really it starts to get a little weird.
This advertisement is brought to you by Airspeed Amps. Introducing the Airspeed 2x12 PPD speaker cabinet. Designed and custom built in the USA with a focus on innovative design, expert craftsmanship, stunning elegance, and stellar audio quality. Our patent-pending performance projection design system lets you hear your speakers at their best. Angling the speaker baffle back 15 degrees, you now hear sound on axis instead of off-axis. You can read more about our product on our website at airspeedaudio.com.
Yeah.
So let me back up just for a second. So, all right. Tell me, there must have been a first band experience, a first not even a band, maybe a group of people you played with. I want to know when you thought, you know, I'm actually not bad. Oh my God, compared to other people.
Well, I joined my first band, like kind of a garage band, local band, in Auburn where I grew up. Um,
How old were you?
when I was a like within like the first 2 weeks of high school, they did like a talent show, and like some of the guys that were like juniors and seniors, um, they like a week after they met me, they like kicked their guitar player out and asked me to join the band. Uh, so I don't know. I guess like maybe like right going into high school and just like having older people want to like bring me into their circle and play.
Hang
Like
out with
it made me like realize, okay, I can kind of hold my own if the older kids like want to have me around, you know. So that's like
Who doesn't want the older kids to hang out with them, right?
yeah,
That's
yeah.
cool.
I thought it was
No,
cool, you know, and it's
Tell me,
it's
I noticed some of your musical influence. You list Jimi Hendrix and Neil Young, Garcia, Jeff Beck, Springsteen, Miles Davis, the band. That's
oh yeah.
Robbie Robertson, right? What is it about those artists? Because that's from a time that is more maybe my time than your time, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
grew up with those. Hendrix is even older than me, but Springsteen for sure, Garcia for sure, right? It was right then and there. What is it about that music that sort of enticed you or made you like love it?
Well, it was in the house. It was always on. My parents were just really into all different kinds of music, and every day there were, I mean, at least 7, 8 different records on playing front to back through the house almost every day. Like my dad was always putting on music. My mom would sometimes too. Um, and it's always to this day that's the music that really resides in my soul. You know, it's um as I've gotten older and kind of broken down mechanics of what music is, or my interpretation of what music is, um and learning that music as someone who grew up just loving to listen to it, and um I found to really dive into it even more because of not only just from the learning it musically perspective, but also getting it like going down the rabbit hole of how it was recorded and how it was written. And that there is just like I think a lot of the music that I listen to is, in my opinion, from a golden age, from a time where um you had to rely on talent. You were you know, the artist, it was, everything was very from a very deep and personal place and about real serious events, and like or twisted versions of those things, you know, like it came from a very genuine place. Like people weren't trying to sell you stuff as much as they are today. It was just it was from a much simpler and truer place, in my opinion. I mean, there's great music out today, and there's stuff that holds up with all that stuff, but in from my experience and research into the time before when I was around, like you had to be good then. You know, you couldn't brush your mistakes under the rug as like you can today with digital manipulation and stuff.
Right.
Like what you hear, especially, you know, like going back to the band, like listening to those recordings that they were doing in a basement. I mean, it's just, there's something so cool. There's just something I love about tape hiss, you know, and hearing the tape turn on and capturing an incredible moment and performance in time.
Yeah,
And
I totally agree with you. And what's very interesting too is, you know, they weren't making the money people make today. I mean,
no, most
not
of
all,
most of
not
those
even
guys.
close. I mean, when they first started, they weren't making, they were making, I mean, they were making less than a McDonald's worker is making today.
Mhm.
So it was amazing. It was from the videos that I've seen and the history that they did it because they loved it. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to get rich. It wasn't.
Oh, it was all for the love of it.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
and it's just like, there's just some people, it's just like, and I feel like myself included. I mean, I definitely have my mental struggles where it's hard and I feel like I want to just go crawl into a hole and not do it for a while. But like, I always bounce back from that. Like, but like, it's just I know for me personally, it's in my blood, and I think that a lot of those guys, especially guys that are still around that are just, and guys from that time that aren't, like, that just made a career from it and like in any way, shape or form made a living. And that's a spectrum, and there's a lot of household names, guys that kind of just barely scooted by surviving, but people know who they are, and there's people that you don't know that probably made a killing doing it. It's just, it's all sorts of different things, and it's like, and people get different gigs, and it's a journey, it's like,
so tell me,
and oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. Tell me about, so I'm looking at these, I mean, aside from Hendrix, a lot of that is, clean tone, right, on the guitar, or maybe even acoustic.
Yeah.
How do you get enthralled with distortion? How does distortion become central in your life? At least the music that I've heard so far from you.
Yeah, it's I'm always searching for different tones. So a lot of what I try to get out is just get the amp. I like to be able to like get as much grit out of my amp as I can without a pedal, but also be able to find the sweet spot where I can roll it back and get a nice chimey clean sound. So that's like, but I like to be able to kind of, if I'm gonna like, be playing light in a verse, roll the volume down and then roll the volume up, and that's my chorus sound. And then if I need a lead, I'll maybe kick a boost on of just a little. But I like air to move, and I like to just get as much of a good, greasy, gritty sound out of my amp as I can, or at least have the capability of being able to. I like to do a lot of cool, clean stuff too, but with like delays and what was that? Sorry,
you're a bit of a throwback. I will say. I'm not sure a lot of. I mean, maybe new guitar players today, but you're kind of like, you're saying things that resonated with my generation. Which is amazing, right? Because, it was about big amps, and it was about tone and tubes and all of that. And, I mean, I know from my standpoint, and a lot of people say my age kind of reject the whole digital amplifier situation because it's just vapid of soul. I don't know how else to describe it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and and the way that I describe it, when I talk to people, is there's one moment that is like the defining moment of whether I'm like, oh, okay, yay or nays. It's right when you're holding a note or a chord, and right in that moment when it goes away, when you let it sustain, and then it just like, because there'll be like if it's like the really digital stuff, you'll hear it kind of mildly kind of glitch out rather than just kind of sail into the sunset.
Yeah.
And so there's a moment, and it's and if you can get away from, like, if you can hide that moment, then you can make a lot of things work. But that's kind of the thing where I'm like, if I plug into a rig and I'm like hitting a note, or like, and then it goes, like, no matter how long I hold it, but you'll hear the end of it kind of fart out a little bit.
Right.
And so that's kind of the test for an amp for me, is if it's gonna, and there's a lot of like, I actually just picked up this old Music Man amp. I found it on Craigslist. It was like a cool little, like a custom 80s, somebody like customized a little Music Man like 110 kind of Princeton reverb thing. And I think those have like a solid state preamp, and so like and I watched I was watching a thing yesterday with Leo Fender, because I wanted to do some research on the amp, and I guess somebody was talking to Leo at a NAMM convention in the 80s, and he said something about how he didn't have much to do with the Music Man part of the amps. And he's like, and he apparently, this is somebody saying this, I don't know if it's true, but he said like they had it all backwards. They should have had a solid state power section and a tube preamp section.
I mean, again, this goes back even earlier than me, right? But because of the limitations of technology, right? That's where we get that tone from. The more we learned about technology and went to, semiconductors and microchips and all of that, yeah, that's from an electric engineer standpoint, it's efficient and all of that stuff. But you just lose all of the tone that you got from wires and from tubes and from all of those things. And so, it's very interesting. I've talked to many guitar players over my life, and you're no different. You get to that place where like whatever your thing is about tone, however you judge an amp, we all do it, and we all have built our ears up. And for you, it's like over 24 years, right, of playing guitar. And you know what you know, and you know what you hear. And it's in a way, it's kind of black and white for you, right? I'm assuming it's just black and white. You either like it or you don't.
Yeah. You know from that first strumming of a chord, like, okay, this is going somewhere, or this is not my thing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
let
totally.
me ask you a question. So, and I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but because you've been, ensconced in the guitar for so long, it's been a part of your life. If there was no such thing as a guitar, what would you be doing?
I'd be hanging out with a lot of dogs, which I do already. No, I think that my dream job of choice outside of music would to be a voice actor.
Really?
Yeah, I love cinema, and as a kid, I don't know, I've always just kind of done like silly impersonations. I don't know, like can't think, but I just I always thought it'd be fun to try to take your voice and it's a different kind of art form. I think my cloth is cut from the arts, so it would definitely be something in the vein of that. But voice acting has always been an interest of mine. I actually I have this like cartoon idea I wrote, and I've thought about maybe pursuing it and being a voice on it too, if it ever went somewhere. My brother-in-law, who's a killer bass player, he used to tour a lot. But he's an animator, artist and stuff. So that's something that I've thought maybe if I'm ever feeling it.
So tell me about the current gigs or the gigging in the Vegas area. Let's give an insight to our viewers and listeners about kind of what's like a week for you. What's a daily week for you?
Daily, let's see.
Not a daily. I think that's
lately it's staying cool, because we're pushing, as you know, being in Vegas, it's about to get really, really hot. So lately it's been just trying to stay cool and not melt away. But usually in the evenings, it varies. I've been teaching music for over 20 years, so I schedule students in the week,
very cool.
Which is like, and everybody, I try to kind of play, like my schedule kind of moves around too, so it's like it's always kind of shifting. I never really have a same deal week to week, Groundhog Day type week to week deal. It's always kind of just and my wife's the same way, like she's with her work, so like and she actually owns a horse show, so she's a performer as well, so they're always it's never a dull moment, so we're always just kind of scheduling and going and
when you have a gig, because a lot of people might not know behind the scenes of musicians, but like how early do you get there? How much time do you spend on a sound check? And And how just lay that out for somebody who just comes to the show and sees you perform.
Yeah, it varies. It varies venue to venue, gig to gig. I usually try to be at a gig about an hour early. Even if it's like a regular residency thing that I've done for a really long time. There's occasionally, if there's ones that that they're like kind of the setup is quick and you can just run in, I'll maybe do 30 minutes, but it's usually one or the other. I try to get there an hour early, but yeah, like you said that like there's a lot of other things that kind of are besides the show. So it's like I gotta load up my rig and load up, unload, go to the venue, set up, play, tear down, sound check somewhere in there, before the gig,
Right.
tear down, and then unload it from there. It's a whole process of before and after. And a lot of these Vegas gigs where we're playing, it's a 4-hour block and you're playing 3 out of those 4 hours. And for me, I'm usually belting out a bunch of high notes and singing and running around. So it can be a pretty draining thing. I'm excited to play.
Do you ever play acoustic guitar?
I do. I love folk music, and I actually my first guitar teacher was a bluegrass picker, so I love bluegrass music. And anything folky. My first solo record was kind of a folky, had a lot of folky tendencies. So I got an old 74 Guild. That's my baby that I write all my stuff on.
So before we wrap this up, where can people find you? Like on the internet and
yeah,
live?
my main thing is Instagram. Ian Crawford Guitar on Instagram is my main thing, and then we got our band Cosmic Miles. I'm working on some solo stuff as well too, just under my name Ian Crawford, and so there's going to be probably some music coming out from both of those camps here pretty soon. We've been in the studio a lot lately, and we got some fun stuff that we're really excited to share.
And for those people that are in Vegas, go see Ian, right? I mean, I'm assuming.
Yeah, come on out. We're at MGM. We're at the Sand Dollar a lot. That's where we kind of like to cut our teeth and play our original music. The Sand Dollar on Spring Mountain is usually we're there a couple times a month and on the weekends. But MGM, sometimes you'll catch us there. We're around. Keep an eye out for us. We're around.
Well, Ian, this has been awesome, man. Thanks for appearing on Airspeed Sessions, and I hope to come see you for sure since I'm local sometime soon, and hopefully we'll get some other audience members and viewers of this podcast to come out and or certainly say hey to you online.
Awesome. That sounds great, man.
Cool, man.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
All right. Take care.
Yeah, take care. Thank you.
Yep.